Oh hey, it's weird how we keep running into one another. I was just picking out a tattoo, but while I wait for the artist to get ready, maybe we could talk some X-Files. Today we're looking at Never Again, episode 13 of season 4. Debuting February 2nd, 1997, Never Again splits up our agents, with Mulder going on vacation and Scully sent out to investigate crazy Russians and UFOs. Instead, she meets a mystery man who has something of a temper. The episode begins as Ed Gears and his wife are finalizing their divorce. Okay, maybe tone down the happiness just a bit. I don't know why his wife is so happy to be leaving such a sweet guy like Ed. Ed tries drinking his problems away. I mean, losing not just your marriage, but also custody of your kids can't be the easiest thing in the world. But that just begs the question, what could such a nice guy like Ed have done that was so bad he also lost custody of his children? The booze doesn't help, so instead Ed decides to get himself a tattoo from a very shady shop. Although this was the 90s, they were all pretty shady back then. After he gets home, he sort of just passes out. I guess big tough guy couldn't handle a little needle. Either that or the tattoo was haunted. Mulder and Scully are out doing Mulder and Scully things, and Scully would rather be anywhere else right now. I don't blame her really. It's not like the conversation they're having was really all that interesting. But something seems to be bothering her. It's probably gas.
Any life-threatening diseases such as...
Loser.
Oh great. What does my subconscious want now? Ed seems to be hearing voices and thinks it's the people he works with mocking him. He might act a little irrational when he trashes one of his co-workers, maybe boss's desk, but I'm sure his hair-triggered temper isn't why his wife left him. Meanwhile, Scully is taking in all the wonderful sights of the office because she just loves it so much.
Why don't I have a desk?
What do you mean?
Yeah, why doesn't she have a desk? Mulder sort of just brushes past this because he's being forced to go on vacation and needs Scully to keep up on his work. I'm putting a real emphasis on his. He wants her to confirm the identities of some wacky Russians, including comedian Yakov Smirnov for some reason.
I'm not going.
What do you mean?
I think she was pretty clear with the not going part. To say Scully is a tad frustrated with where she is in life is a bit of an understatement. Scully is looking for more out of her work and her life. Every day is the same old shit and it's starting to weigh on her. Like in the episode Home where Scully talked about having children. I think she wants more than chasing after ghosts and UFOs. Unlike Mulder, who's happy speaking to slack-jawed yokels who saw a crop circle one time, Scully actually wants a normal life.
You were just a sign. This work is my life.
And it's become mine.
I don't think Mulder should take it personally. I mean, she was originally put on the X-Files to debunk him and make his work harder to achieve. She was never put on the X-Files to support him.
Ma'am, what if I swore to you that it would never happen again?
Well, it looks like Ed just lost his job. Still though, I'm not seeing why his wife left.
If you were any kind of man, you would have told her to kiss your ass. But no. Another woman sticks it to you.
Suddenly, Jodie Foster, for some reason, starts to antagonize Ed, basically calling him a loser and how women always get one up on him. But Ed doesn't seem to realize that it's all in his head and not coming from the woman that lives below him, just like it wasn't his boss earlier. Some Jehovah's Witnesses come to the door, and Ed rants like a madman, saying the woman that lives below can read his mind. Even the Jehovah's Witnesses look at each other like this fool has lost his damn mind. Unable to accept what a failure Ed is with women, he decides to pay his neighbor a visit so they can have a little chat.
Hey, what are you doing? Get out of here!
You know, I still don't see what was so bad that his wife left him and took the kids. Ed then brings a suspiciously large box down to the basement furnace. He's probably just trying to declutter his place.
Attaboy, lover. From now on, I'm your right-hand gal.
So that voice he's been hearing this whole time is apparently coming from his tattoo, so I guess it is haunted. Mulder calls the office to see how Scully's doing, but it looks like she went on the case regardless. Even when she says no to Mulder, it still secretly means yes. Scully finds one of the Russians and follows him inside a tattoo shop. Except he's not inside the shop, and instead she meets Ed, who's arguing with the tattoo artist to cover up his tattoo.
You'd break my heart over it.
Did you get them all done in prison?
Yes.
Yes he would, and I wouldn't blame him. The The two get talking and Ed, with the biggest balls of steel on the planet, tries asking Scully out on a date. But good luck, pal. She already has a guy.
I'd like that.
Wait, what? It's not that simple though, because she would like to go out, but she can't because she's leaving back to Washington that night. Better luck next time, Eddie. That evening, Scully is in her room when Mulder calls her so he can share his vacation with her and ask her about the investigation. One of the funniest things about this scene is Mulder's apparent love for Elvis, which was brought up in the episodes Shadows and Home.
Only one man has pulled it off. Elvis.
David isn't actually a fan of Elvis. He doesn't hate him, he's just not a fan. So the writers and producers decided to make it a running joke just to annoy him. The same thing goes for the sunflower seeds that David also isn't a fan of. Scully basically tells Mulder there was nothing here, so she handed the case off to the local field office.
Look, Mulder, I have to go.
What, do you got a date or something? You're kidding.
She didn't have a date technically, but the fact Mulder insists on coming down to make sure she's investigated everything thoroughly gives her a change of heart and has her call up Ed for that date. She must be desperate for company because she's even willing to pick him up. Ed's tattoo is more than a little jealous, so he does the only sane thing he can think of and burns it with his cigarette.
I think the last time I went on a date was to see Glengarry Glen Ross, and the characters in the movie had a much better time.
The last time she was on a date was to see Glengarry Glen Ross? Let's put our thinking caps on for a second. Glengarry Glen Ross came out in 1992, so if Scully were to have seen it, then we can guess that her last date was in 1992. However, she went on a date with Rob in the episode Jersey Devil, which came out almost 1 year after Glengarry Glen Ross. So to me, this looks like Rob dropped the ball so hard that not only did he not get another date, but Scully completely forgot they even went out.
Man, you are one pathetic loser. No offense.
No, none taken.
Scully notices Ed's tattoo is bleeding, but luckily for him, Scully tells someone she's a medical doctor.
I'm a doctor. Do you want me to take a look at it?
Also, Scully needs to calm down, because I've never seen her look at anyone like this before. Scully finds the picture of Ed's kids, and you'd think this would be a huge red flag, but she loves the bad boys, I guess. Instead of going to the nice restaurant like they had planned, Scully asks Ed to bring her to the crummy bar that he told her about earlier. They start to hit it off. Scully talks about having authority figures in her life, people she looks up to and wants to please. But I have a feeling she wants a little more than that. Scully asks to see Ed's tattoo, which he really doesn't want her to see, and when he grabs her hands, to say she got a little scared and a lot turned on would be an understatement. So the key to Scully's heart is being tall, dark, handsome, and slightly psychotic. While I've got one of the four at least, Ed suggests that if she's so curious about his tattoo, then maybe she should get her own. And she does. I in no way edited that. That is exactly how it plays out in the episode. Seriously though, when I watch this scene, I just have to focus on Spider-Man playing baseball. Anyways, they go back to his place, where he suggests she stay the night. Not because he's looking for anything, people, get your minds out of the gutter. He just wants to make sure she's safe since the weather is so bad outside.
Medical doctor.
Will you let me take a look at it? I am a doctor.
Look at what exactly, Scully? Oh, the tattoo. She really could not wait to get his shirt off, though. Things get really tense when Ed grabs Scully and his tattoo threatens to kill her. Don't worry, everybody, I'm sure nothing happened. The following morning, Mulder is calling around looking for her because he can't do a damn thing without her. Scully wakes up in Ed's bed, wearing his shirt and little else. Detectives come to Ed's door looking for him because they have some questions they need to ask about his downstairs neighbor. His neighbor has gone missing, and some blood was found in her place that wasn't hers. Scully really knows how to pick her men. She does some poking and prodding and discovers the ink used in his tattoo might have some chemical compound in it which may have psychoactive properties.
What's wrong?
Ed, sit down.
When Ed gets back from getting breakfast, he and Scully need to have a little chit-chat. She tells him detectives found what may be his blood in his neighbor's apartment. along with something in their tattoos that may cause them to see and hear things, so they should get tested. Depending on how last night went, they might need to get tested for other things too. But I don't know if it's the tattoo, because Ed comes off as legit crazy.
She hates women. My wife, my boss, you.
Are you sure it's the tattoo that hates women? Scully really should have noticed something was off earlier when she found the burnt photo of his kids. Scully is at least very calm during the whole thing, but if she overreacted, who knows how the situation could go. While Scully gets dressed, Ed uses the redial on his phone to see who Scully was talking to. And he doesn't like what he hears when he realizes Scully works for the FBI. Scully puts up a good fight against Ed, but for once a guy is actually too big for her to handle. Ed drags Scully to the basement where he intends on putting her in the furnace like he did his neighbor.
This isn't you, Ed!
Instead, Scully comes to, and Ed decides to burn his tattoo instead of giving into it. Scully returns to the office all banged up, and Mulder makes a joke about her appearing in the X-Files for the second time, which is some kind of record, I guess. Nothing has really changed for Scully, and she still feels like there's more out there for her. Though Mulder still thinks she's acting the way she is, simply because she doesn't have her own desk, completely missing the point of how she's feeling entirely.
Not everything is about you, Mulder. This is my life.
Yes, but it's...
Never Again is a good Scully-centric episode that helps us dive in and learn more about who she is as a person. She yearns for more outside of chasing down ghosts and little green men. Like in the episode Home, she spoke about children and a family, and that theme sort of continues here. She doesn't just want a life of being subservient and chasing after her co-workers' life goals, she needs to carve her own path and discover things for herself. The tattoo she gets of the Ouroboros is symbolic of her life and her desires, always going in circles, dying and being reborn. The tattoo in some circles can also represent things like fertility, which could harken back to her desire of having a family, a theme that will definitely come into play later on in the series. It's just nice to see Scully doing something for herself for a change. Whether there is or isn't something between herself and Mulder, she deserves to find whatever it is she's looking for. This one tends to annoy the shippers, who can't stand to see someone come between Mulder and Scully, but it's not like Mulder hasn't gone out and done something on his own before. Never Again would be the final episode written by writing partners Glenn Morgan and James Wong, until their return in season 10. At the time, the title referred to how they felt their chances of writing another episode would be, not because they couldn't, but more so because they felt burnt out. Before starting on Never Again, they were writing a story about Abraham Lincoln's ghost. That story and all of the research that had been put into it went to the wayside, however, because they had tons of rewrites to do for Musings of a Cigarette-Smoking Man. Because of all the rewrites they had to do for that episode, they sort of lost interest in their Abraham Lincoln ghost story and began on Never Again. They were also tired of some of the negativity they received towards their work. Entertainment Weekly in particular would write scathing reviews of their episodes, and gave The Field Where I Died an F, claiming that it was written solely to give David an Emmy nomination.
She doesn't know.
Glenn and James's feelings can be summed up when Ed's neighbor lines the bottom of her birdcage with an Entertainment Weekly magazine. Gillian Anderson at the time was going through a dark period in her life and asked the men to write her something that would give the audience a darker look at Scully. The men agreed, and Glenn, who did most of the writing for the episode, wrote a story where Scully would finally stand up for herself and say what's on her mind. Gillian was really happy with how the episode turned out, saying, "I thought the plot of Never Again was a great idea. I personally was going through a dark period at the time, and I wanted to explore Scully's dark side. For some reason, Glenn and Jim were on the same wavelength that week. Afterward, a lot of people told me that on that episode I was so unlike Scully, or that it showed my range. I told them I thought they were wrong. I don't think that what I did here was out of character for Scully. The only thing different is that the audience hadn't seen it before." Gillian also became so interested in Scully's fascination with the tattoos that she offered to get the tattoo for real, but they told her it would take way too long to shoot. One of the initial ideas Gillian asked for in the script was for Scully to fall hard for a man, which would end up leading to a passionate love scene. Glenn Morgan thought it was a great idea and wrote the scene into the script. However, when Chris Carter got a hold of the script, he removed the entire thing. Rob Bowman directed the episode, but he wasn't the initial choice. Originally, Quentin Tarantino was set to direct it. The previous year, Tarantino had directed an episode of ER, but did so without being a member of the Directors Guild of America. And because he didn't join after his job on ER, the Guild made sure to block any attempt at directing an episode of The X-Files. With an episode where Scully was supposed to have a hot love scene at one point, imagine all the feed shots people with that fetish missed out on. But I don't have that, so don't look at me. While filming Never Again, Gillian and actor Rodney Rowland, who James and Morgan brought over from their show Space Above and Beyond, began a relationship that lasted roughly a year. And if you've ever seen the video where Gillian kisses David at the Emmys before her date, well, if you notice, her date is Rodney. Poor guy has basically become something of a meme in recent years. Big-time Hollywood actor Jodie Foster would play the role of Betty. She was a close friend of the casting director for The X-Files and agreed to come on. Her role only took about an hour to record, and she nailed everything pretty much in the first take. What's interesting is Scully is based off her character Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs, and now here Jodie is on The X-Files. There at one point was even talks of Gillian playing Clarice in the Hannibal sequel film, but because her contract with Fox prevented her from doing it, that went to Julianne Moore instead. And then years later, Gillian would appear on the Hannibal TV show as his shrink. This is like a 6 degrees of Gillian Anderson going on here. Back to that removed love scene mentioned earlier. When Gillian read the script and saw the scene where she was going to get down and dirty with Ed, she asked if she could pick out the man that, in her words, would be sticking his tongue down my throat.
It should have been me, not him!
Glenn and James sent headshots of Rodney, and she wasn't too sure. She needed to see him work, so they sent her footage from their show, Space Above and Beyond. Eventually, Gillian would learn that the role was written with Rodney specifically in mind, so she stopped pestering them and just went with it. Chris Carter was the man responsible for removing the scene, and Morgan pushed back by saying that Mulder got to have sex in the episode 3. Chris and the other producers felt like every female star at the time was jumping into bed with everyone, so they wanted Scully to be different. And she was different, alright. As Morgan put it, she's different, but the way she is now, she's not human. The debate as to whether Scully did sleep with Rodney has been debated to death by fans. If they did, then why is Rodney on the couch? But at the same time, why is Scully wearing his shirt? I don't think there's a clear-cut answer to this mystery, but what I can say is I have the original script with the intact love scene that was removed, and I'm gonna quickly read it over. But before I do, I need to set the mood just a bit. Ed immediately moves into Scully, holding her arms against the wall. She meets his lips. The kiss is intense and passionate, fueled by what they know of one another. Scully pulls away as Ed runs his lips down her neck. She throws her head back, pulling his shirt all the way off his back, digging her nails into his back. Ed lifts Scully. Her legs wrap around his back. He drops to his knees on the floor. She responds, primal, as he pulls her coat off her back, Scully's legs straddling the man on his knees. Each utterance from the voice increases Ed's passion, which in turn amps hers. Down on the floor, camera begins to move past them, toward the open door, just as Ed lowers Scully to the floor. Camera continues out the door and into the hall. Looking back towards Ed's apartment, it holds. After a beat, the door slams. Inside, intense movements, not dissimilar in sound to Miss Schilling's attack. Okay, I'm definitely gonna need a cold shower after this one. Never Again currently sits at 7.4 on IMDb. I'm actually surprised it's this low. I myself would probably go with a 7, but I've noticed a lot of women really like this one. I think women must get something different out of this that a guy just doesn't understand or connect with. But it's a good, solid story. Next up is a very different episode as Scully begins to deal with her cancer, and the lone gunman and Mulder do whatever they can to find her a cure in the episode Memento Mori. Well, I finally got my tattoo, and as you can see, it means super badass cool guy. But with that taken care of, what did you think of Never Again? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, that's all for today. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, and stay spooky.
Underground clubs, cheap tattoos, one-night stands.
I don't go out very much.
This Sunday, Agent Scully exposes her wild side, and it could get her killed. The X-Files. Sunday at 9, 8 Central on Fox.